Welcome back to Break the Cycle Podcast. Today we're going to talk about types of trauma, all different kinds, the big T, little t, plus size T, baby T. We're going to talk about some
trauma responses. We're talking freeze, fight,
flight, freeze, flop, fawn.
We're also going to talk a little bit more about schizophrenia as well.
And some myths and facts about mental health and what happens in the mental health industry.
We're doing a deep dive into trauma and all things around trauma. Mm-hmm. So buckle up, grab a snack. It's going to be a good episode.
Yes. Lots in store.
Lots in store. Should we start off with the myth?
Yeah.
The Mythbusters?
Okay, let's do Mythbusters Mental Health 101. Okay. So I did this, did some deep dive, some research. All right. So true or false? Myth or fact? 87% of therapists report having sexual attraction to their clients.
87?
87.
That's out of 10 people, that's
8 out of 10.
9.
Yeah.
87.
9 out of 10 therapists.
9 out of 10 therapists, round up.
If they extrapolate it, look at your average therapist. They're probably, 35 plus, maybe older, maybe not as, maybe they have a younger clientele.
I think the therapists are fucked up. I'm going to say truth.
Okay. Yeah, I think based on that reverse engineering, I'm going to say truth as well.
It is true.
Whoa.
They did a study on it. So it was a study done by these two individuals that kind of did like a deep dive on ethics and ethics in mental health counseling, mental health treatment overall. And they found out that 87% of therapists reported that they had sexual attraction. This is men and women. Keep that in mind. Had sexual attraction to their patients. Now, here's another good one.
I was going to say, I think it's interesting because like you share such vulnerable moments with your therapist too, that like maybe there's like an intimate space,
right?
And it gets convoluted with like sexual attraction when really you're just like looking into this person's eyes as they're like telling you their deepest, darkest secrets.
For sure.
And you're like having those intimate moments.
Yeah. And there's like social penetration theory where it's like the more that you like open up, the more intimacy is built. But social penetration theory works off of like you share, I share, you share, I share, and then there's shared intimacy, right? But if you're continuing to divulge and open up, like it could be a one-sided attraction.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know. I can see that like as attraction, but I think obviously there's a boundary where it's like if they're making a move.
Well, they can't make a move.
Right.
That's
exactly.
illegal.
But if they're like, I'm attracted to these people and that I share intimate moments with them and I connect with them.
Yeah. They're like, I really like my girlfriend, but damn, Kyla's chats today would be
got me really hot and heavy. You know?
Just
man, oh man. So with this study, this is in the same study. So myth or fact? 57% of them report having sexual relationships with their patients or clients after they're no longer patients or clients or in them.
I'm gonna have to say false on that one. Yeah, because that's like actually making a move on it. 57, 6 out of 10 therapists have sexual relationships with their clients after they part ways as a client.
Either their job or the patient part ways.
But it's not with every patient. It's like 1 out of their many patients.
They just said this is a percentage of them have sex with their patients. Sexual relations.
6 out of 10 therapists have had sexual intimacy with a patient, either previous or current or past.
I disagree.
Yeah.
No.
It is false. It's actually 90%.
No way. Get out of here. Where's this study coming from?
So this is a study done
like fucking
by
Dr. Seuss.
It's an actual ethics study that they use for counseling people who take like registered drug and alcohol classing for ethics.
Okay.
Ethics and boundaries classing 101. It's used in this.
But where is this study coming from?
We
need to do a little deep dive here.
I will pull it up for you.
We need to take a left turn.
You know what's interesting though is like.
Is it drug and alcohol? Is it substance related?
It's all therapists. They did a study.
A lot of our clients are obviously.
Okay, this is a study done in 2016 by Pope and Vasquez.
Okay.
Vasquez gives that energy.
2016, Pope.
And Pope doesn't, bro.
And
Vatican City vibes.
Yeah.
Quez study. In 2016, Kenneth S. Pope and Melba J.T. Vasquez wrote about a number of topics related to ethics and psychology, including emotional competence, ethical intelligence, ethical dilemmas, response to mistakes. Pope and Vasquez are also the authors of Ethics in Psychiatry Psychotherapy and Counseling, a Practical Guide, which is considered a classic text in the field. Some say it's a must-read for both beginning and seasoned clinicians, that it is a valuable resource for students, educators, and clinical researchers. This is in the study.
I don't know. I would like to do a deep dive on the study off the pod, just because it's like, who's the focus group? Where are they getting this information from? How many people
Attraction percentage. 87% have been attracted to their patients. And then that's 95% male, 76% female. And then sexual relations have had 92 have had sexual relations.
Let me ask you this. How is the sexual relationships percentage higher than the attractiveness percentage? Because in order for someone to have sexual relations with someone, they have to be attracted to them in the first place. So how does that make any sense?
That is the reporting. I
but you know what I mean? 85% were attracted, but 92%
I want to know
had
who
sex.
they're asking.
What the hell?
So this, if you think about it though, like you could have like 7 people out of 10 say, yeah, I really like to do this. But like, who knows if that majority of that people, it was between men and women. So what if it was all women who had sex with them instead of all the men? You get what I'm saying? Because it was a mixed subject.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of trauma in those statistics.
That's sexual trauma for sure.
Yeah. All right. So, true or false? People can predict schizophrenia by the smell and how they smell.
People can predict schizophrenia by how they smell.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that schizophrenic people have a certain scent.
Mm-hmm.
And then who's the person predicting the schizophrenia based off of the scent?
Like providers.
Like a greyhound?
No, like providers, physicians.
Providers can predict schizophrenia based off of the hormones, pretty much.
Yeah.
The pheromones of someone.
This checks out. I think schizophrenia people have certain pheromones. I'm going to say this is true.
What do you think?
I don't know. It's so strange that I think, yeah, maybe it's true.
In 1962, a study found that sweat of people with chronic schizophrenia had a distinct odor that was not present in the sweat of people without schizophrenia. Some say the odor is difficult to describe, and one article mentions a skunk-like odor that persisted even after bathing. Most report skunk-like odors. So I just have to say that this is true in my experience. So I have had past patients, I can remember 2 distinctively, came in to treatment, and I was like, oh my God, what is that smell? Like, okay, they need to shower, like obviously no judgment, like let's get you in the shower. No, it was there. The whole room. I mean, it just like overtook the whole room. I mean, I could not get the smell out of my nose. And both of these patients had schizophrenia. Like there was a distinct smell that came with them. Even after they showered, they would still have this smell to them.
Like skunk?
It was like skunky, like B-O.
Maybe it was like the weed just leaving their pores.
No, this was like a whole different, like, have you ever been like in a hot, humid day and it was just like this heavy, thick BO, like skunky? That's what it smelled like. I could not. It was the craziest thing. And they both had severe schizophrenia.
Swampy vibes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Myth or truth?
Okay.
Only 30 to 50% of people have an internal monologue.
False.
30 to 50% have an internal monologue, meaning like a voice in their head?
Yeah.
I think everyone has a voice in their head.
Yeah.
I think it's like 100% for sure. I mean, if you don't have an internal monologue, you're pretty much a monk.
Yeah, like a sociopath.
So what they say is that is true. So they say that 1 out of 10,
Who is they?
Right? This is like 1 out of 10 people that they have reported that they don't have an inner monologue. Others describe their brain as well-functioning computer that does not process thoughts verbally, and that the connection to the loudspeaker and microphone is different from other people's. And those who say that there is something verbal going on inside their heads will typically describe it as words without a sound.
Oh, so I feel like maybe this is just describing how you perceive your own inner thoughts.
Yeah.
Like,
some people say that they hear nothing, though. Like, they don't see words, they don't hear words. There's nothing going on.
They don't see or hear words?
Like, when you think about what's going on, if, like, I'm
talking to me, yeah.
I've got words going on in my head right now. that I can hear. Like I said, like a whole conversation to you without talking.
I'm responding.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and even if I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like,
yeah, I think what I'm going to say next.
There's
yeah,
constant narration in your head.
constant. Like I'm like, God damn, this motherfucker. Like my head is like, God damn, these people won't shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? Like I've got something going on in my head all the time.
Yeah, like
Anybody who
constantly.
experiences silence, how peaceful is that?
How about you, Danny? Are you constantly hearing voices in your head?
I'd say like at sometimes throughout the day, but like am I constantly? No.
You're not like to your thought. You're like, oh, I gotta go to the gym. Like,
Yeah, I mean, but there's more like of an impulse. I mean, to say that people don't have a monologue though, an internal monologue, it means that they never have a voice in their head, right? And I think that that's just like not true.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, because like at yoga, my voice turns off.
Yeah, sometimes that yoga mine will turn on even more for a little bit, you know?
No, mine's pretty quiet. Like I'm just like in the body
Yeah.
fully.
If I'm meditating, yeah. But I mean, at some point throughout the day, yes, I'm definitely talking to myself in my head.
they say between 5 to 10% of the population do not experience an inner voice.
I would like to meet one of those.
I would too. I would love to have their thoughts in my head for one. Or I would not have their thoughts in my head. You know what I mean?
There's no
like,
thoughts in your head.
like I would just love to just be like, just,
Is that what heroin's like?
yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I would say like, there's actually a song that, you know, the Velvet Underground,
No.
like Lou Reed.
Mm.
You know who that is?
No
You
idea.
don't know who Lou Reed is? 1960s, like.
We are in 2024, Kyla.
Oh God, you know who Lou Reed is? Okay, so he has a song that's called "The Perfect Day," and it's about heroin, and it's hysterical. I think it's funny because obviously I'm in recovery from heroin. But one time I was like, "Mom, I want this played at my funeral," and she was like, "You are the sickest fucking person I've ever met." It's like, oh, such a perfect day. I'm glad I've spent it with you. It's really kind of sick and twisted, but
so
like it's
when you're
just
on
like,
heroin, you just don't have thoughts.
there's nothing going on. It's just like quiet.
So you have experienced it before.
Yeah, of course. That's why I went after it. But like it gets to the point where it's like debilitating, and that's all I'm thinking about
Yeah.
Is not thinking.
is not thinking or not feeling.
Right.
even.
It's like the chasing the high is better than the high.
Yeah, of course, always.
Always.
You will never experience, if you do heroin, you will always be chasing after that very first high.
Huh.
That very first one, you will never get it. You will never experience it again.
I think that goes for like most drugs, honestly.
Yeah, probably.
Like nothing will ever be the same as like your first time getting high off of weed or like.
Well,
I feel like it depends. Like amphetamines, you
yeah.
have the same experience.
Yeah, I think you build a tolerance though.
Unless you're
now.
doing, like,
when I
meth,
was first,
and you're like-
yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Not
don't
sleeping for days, and then you're seeing shadow people. It's a whole different experience than like,
Slender Man.
yeah, like a whole different experience.
Wild. Do you have any other myths?
Yeah. Okay.
Last one.
True or false? Many people who suffer from schizophrenia actually have something called anosognosia. Which literally means they don't know that they have a disease.
Yeah.
So like they have schizophrenia and they have no idea.
I feel like yes. Like a lot. What was the question?
So many people who have schizophrenia,
Yeah.
I have
right,
no idea that they have it.
have no idea that they're suffering.
Yes, true.
Like they really just think like this is normal day to day.
100%.
And it's like an actual condition. So like if you were to ask someone who's schizophrenia, like, are you hearing things? A lot of people are like, aren't you also hearing things?
Right.
And so it's very common, like people don't know like that people who's like are going into schizophrenia or struggling with schizophrenia, which happens at younger ages in their 20s. That's when it typically develops, or people in their early 20s to mid 20s. And they think it's just like normal everyday life. Like everybody's going through this, but other people are like, you haven't showered in 3 days. You haven't brushed your teeth. Like I can't because there's someone in the drain talking to me. Like, you know, and it's like,
Yeah, but in
they
their
don't even
like
realize
waking
it
consciousness, it's
because
like
it's
reality.
so chaotic
Yeah,
in
like-
their environment that they don't realize what's going on.
That's so crazy. To
Isn't
be in
that
a
scary?
schizophrenic brain.
Huh?
That's crazy to be in a schizophrenic brain.
There's actually things on YouTube where you can watch what it's like to have schizophrenia. They made me they made me watch this when I was like working with patients one-on-one and like clients, like actually being in the facility, the mental facility or the eating disorder facility, because you would have patients with schizophrenia. And so like to be sensitive to their experience, we had to watch these trainings of like, it was scary. I won't lie. It was a very scary
Imagine
experience.
if they had glasses or like headphones or like a VR set that you just like put on and experience like different mental health disorders.
Yeah. Gosh.
So you could like really understand
it. I mean, it's easier to do that with schizophrenia, right? Because it's like visual and auditory, but something like depression is just a lot of feelings and, you know, mental agony or anxiety of that like high heart rate.
A heavy weight on your shoulders at all times.
Exactly. I will also say I did have a patient this one time who could also suffer with schizophrenia. One of the same people that had the issue with the smell always had headphones in because the music would drown out the voices. So we'd always be listening to music nonstop. I mean, full blast, like you could hear it through the headphones. And that was the only thing that helped him cope was hearing the music because it drowned out the other sounds that were going on, which God love him. It worked, you know, but God, like to be in that situation where you always have to drown sounds out. I'm so grateful. Oh gosh, I'm so grateful.
Thank God for a healthy brain. Thank God for a healthy brain. Yeah, I can't imagine that.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Have you ever been attracted to your therapist?
No, I've never had a female therapist.
Never? Have you?
Have I ever been attracted to my therapist?
Yeah.
No, not physically attracted. Emotionally attracted. But I think you need to have an emotional attraction to your therapist to feel open enough to...
Yeah.
That's why I kind of believe that stat, because it's like, once you build that, then, you know.
Yeah, and I feel like it's like a one-way relationship. I mean, it makes sense. Like, I hate, like, the weirdest thing for me in therapy was then they, like, don't tell me what's up with their life.
Yeah, because it's a boundary.
Yeah. I'm like, so that's me. How have you been?
Yeah.
You know,
like,
and
this isn't about me.
yeah, and I'm like, ugh.
Well, I had a therapist, the last therapist I was seeing, he would just talk about him the whole time. I was like,
that is
seems
not
like a bad
good.
therapist.
why am
Yeah,
I
not
paying
good
you
therapist.
to just tell me about all your accolades and struggles? Like, what?
Are you still seeing this therapist?
No.
Is that why you stopped going?
I stopped going after he no-showed one of the appointments. And then I no-showed one of the appointments, and then he charged me, and I was like, fuck this.
We need to get you a better therapist.
Yeah, we need to find you a good therapist.
Yeah.
I need to go on cycle.
Yeah, find a therapist.
Find it. Brightside.
Yeah.
Brightside does amazing. They have you checked out Brightside?
Yeah, I mean, I've checked it out in that we help people find therapy through that platform.
But like, have you personally, like, because I'm going to start using
I
it.
haven't. I probably should.
Brightside is an online therapy and psychiatry platform.
Yeah.
I've used it. It was great.
Yeah.
The guy was fantastic, my therapist.
Are you
All
still seeing him?
online.
I'm seeing a therapist in person. I wanted to see a therapist in person, but a lot of people like therapists online. So
Yeah.
that worked for them. Yeah. He made me realize that my trauma response was more of a fight, which I thought I was more of a freezer, and then a flight, which was interesting.
So you fight and then you're like, I'm out of here. Get on a
More
plane.
confrontational than originally anticipated.
Interesting.
Yeah, he also told me about flop and fawn, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
So there's 5 types
Yeah.
of trauma responses.
But people are most common, like they're most familiarized with fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
They
Most
don't
people,
know.
I feel like it's fight or flight. And then
Yeah.
freeze was brought into it. And then I realized that there was also flop and fawn.
Uh-huh.
So flop is to collapse and become unresponsive or to faint.
Yeah.
Literally just...
What's the difference between that and freeze?
Freeze is more of like the inability to move or act against a threat. Like flop is literally like...
Like people do that when they have flashbacks.
Yeah.
I feel like that's common when people who suffer from traumatic flashbacks, they will literally like,
It's like a faint? Like they're fainting?
yeah, like inebriated or they're
Yeah.
like stuck.
They're like
and they just-
shocked.
yeah, they're just going to
So
it.
fainting might be a better word for that.
Yeah, they call it flop. And then fawn, which I think is really interesting. I feel like a lot of people are fawners and don't realize it, is to please someone to avoid the conflict.
Ooh. But why do they call it fawn?
Like a deer.
Oh, I'm thinking of flan.
Like the
Pudding.
dessert?
Of course. Oh my god! Or I'm also thinking of like a baby fawn.
Yeah.
Like a Bambi.
Yeah, like a
Bambi,
deer.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Bambi's trying to please you. How did they make that jump between a fawn and someone trying to please someone to get over conflict?
Like a fawn galloping around.
Go ask a therapist.
Yeah, somebody.
Who may be attracted
Who
to
made
you.
these new terms?
But fight, flight, freeze?
Fawn, flop.
Fawn or flop? Which one are you, Kyla?
I feel like I switch in between. Depends on the situation.
You're a code switcher?
Yeah. I'm like,
Yeah.
as I feel like I do that to like protect myself in situations. So I think I used to be a fighter.
Yeah.
I definitely used to be a fighter, but then I got to a point where I was like, I'm just out of here. I'm just going to dip out. But then I got to a point where you've experienced so many different types of trauma that big T and little T, which we'll get into that a little bit later. Yeah. And when it's like a mix of both, that I like start freezing.
Yes.
Because
I feel like
I'm
at work, we had an incident when we were like onboarding a few new accounts and you like froze up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you kind of were like a little bit reactoral, but more it was like freezed.
Yeah. I feel because it's been like a very different things that I've experienced of like, how do I react?
Yeah.
And like,
you like internalize.
Yeah. I'll start like overthinking and like, which is obviously not a healthy way to deal with it, but it's I'd rather do that than like be a fighter or like I'm quitting. You know what I mean? Like, fuck this. It taken me a long time because I used to be like, oh, you want to start some shit?
Yeah. You want to run games?
You want to run
fucking
games
love
right
games.
Now? Yeah. Like I would get like that, or then I would be like, I quit. Bye guys. I don't want to deal with it. But the freezing has allowed me to sit in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge what's going on, and be like, how do I feel about the situation? Is it worth it for me to stick it out? Can I like approach? But there also takes some time. Like I have to admit, when you're in certain situations, if you don't know the person and you're in fight, flight, or freeze in those modes, you can react differently because I didn't know you too well, like both of you very well in that time, in that instance. So I didn't want to show any emotions.
So true, because I feel like more recently there was like that little altercation. It was more of a fight response rather than a freeze response.
Yeah, because there's an emotional attachment now.
Yeah.
So I want to, it's not an emotional attachment where I'm like, mommy, you know what I mean? Like it's like,
you have more rapport built, so
and
you
trust.
Can, respond more maybe authentically.
Authentic, yeah. Instead of the cold stone like face of like freezing, now it's like
you must catch yourself before you respond versus now you could respond,
which is a coping skill in my experience. And so this time, again, acting more authentically because I have both relationship with both of you where I feel like I could, if I cut my leg off tomorrow or something happens, like I break my leg or something happens, like I could be like, I'm in the hospital, and you guys would like send me flowers. Like you guys would show up if
for sure
something were bad to happen.
I'd be like, how many piggyback rides?
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like you guys would show up. One of you would be at my house, pick me up, and be like, okay, what do you need? Which I've never gotten that from, number one, an employer. Number two, people that I've just worked, been around.
Yeah,
that would just care so much, and you guys have created that space. So shout out to you guys. But
if you ever break a leg,
yeah. Please
I'll be giving you the piggyback rides.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Daniel? You fight, freeze, flop, fawn?
I resonate a lot with Kyla's response. I think initially when I was younger, I would fight, but now I'm more of a freezer or a flighter for sure. Just like, I don't want to deal with this.
I want to see you flop.
I'm gonna dip out. Yeah, I have yet to flop. But yeah, I think I was a fighter initially. Now I'm more of like a freeze or flight.
Why do you feel like you're more of a freeze or flight now?
Because fighting fire with fire typically doesn't work. So you either fight it with ice and you freeze, or you fight it with some air and you fly. It's like the elements, like the last Avatar.
Are you an airbender?
Yeah, I mean, now I'm flying a lot more for sure. So I would say I'm on my way to being an airbender. But I don't know what's the best one, because everyone falls into one of these buckets, right?
There's no best one.
Exactly. So like, what's the healthiest one? Like, how do you
fight? No, just kidding.
I feel like you're a mix between. So here's the thing: is sometimes you freeze, and then sometimes you'll fight. You do get reactive sometimes.
Yeah.
If someone questions, or is like, puts you in a point where like your idea is not like whatever idea you put out onto the table, and someone like is like, let me flip this idea and see something else. And you're like, well, this is the decision I have made. I'm like, okay, bro. I just wanted to ask why you made this decision. And I don't think it's you because like I think that's just your reaction because you've worked hard and no one knows the work that you put into something. So that's your reaction, is because you're defensive of how hard you've worked for something.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you do freeze. I've seen you freeze where you're like,
I guess I'm all three. I'm a triple threat.
Pew, pew, pew.
Yeah.
Do you ever fawn, either of you?
Fawn, try to please someone to do away with the conflict.
It's strategic fawn.
Yeah.
I think I would freeze and then I would fawn.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would be like, it's not like I have my back against the wall, if that makes sense. Like my trauma response would be like, how do I get out of this situation effectively?
Yeah.
Do I have to please to remove myself to then like get a higher ground, or just like...
It's strategic in relationships. Depends on the relationship. Like if you're dealing with like mom, or you know what I mean, totally different relationship.
Child responses.
Or if it's a business and partner, it's a different response.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
You want something from them. So I really think it's dependent on the types of trauma that you've experienced.
Yes.
And
I
the
feel like even
relationship.
fawn could be maybe better described as like a chameleon. I was talking to one of my really good friends, and they were like, I just had an unstable parent growing up.
Yeah.
So, and I feel so the same way, where we're very emotionally intelligent because we had to anticipate like 3 seconds in advance, like, will this person explode or not?
Yeah.
And if they will, then like, let's try to switch or code switch, or like either step up or step down in a certain way.
Yeah.
So I feel like fawn is almost like to please someone, or like a chameleon, almost like, how do I disengage and try to de-escalate the situation?
Are you the oldest?
Youngest.
Interesting. Because I was the same way, but I reacted. Had an emotionally explosive, like family, like had to deal with all of that. But my reaction was like, how the fuck do I get out of this?
Yes.
Like, don't want to be around it. Like, every time I go somewhere, I always tell everybody this. I'm looking for the exits because I want to make sure I have a safety plan in place. And
Well,
because
that's like a flight type of response.
right. But it's like, where's the exit? And that's always going to be like, I want to get out of here, or I would fight because I would just not understand I didn't want to understand it. You know what I mean? Like, why is this my problem? Why are your emotionally explosive situation making it my problem? So that became a coping skill of like fighting back or getting the fuck out of there,
What about you, Elijah? What are you? Fight, flight, fawn, freeze?
Fight. I would say fight. It depends. I would say fight.
I think it always depends.
Yeah, I think I could be all of them. Besides flop, I've never flopped before.
That's like
I
actually
flopped in my-
fainting, right? Like physically fainting.
Yeah, physically fainting. But I think that I fawned as a child. Like I was an emotional chameleon, so I could like respond.
Yeah.
I think I very rarely flight unless it's like a very strong altercation that I know is not going to work. There's not going to be any type of resolve, so I'll like remove myself for a few minutes and then try to re-engage. But like it's more.
How do you know?
Which one to do?
No, like how?
Like what element to bring down?
How do you know, like at that point in a relationship, that you, like an altercation has gotten to the point where you're like, there's no way? Because I've been in so many altercations where I've been like, I can always work this out with this person, whether it's my fault or their fault.
I think with like the example that I'm thinking with Danny is like sometimes we could get really heated, and I feel like I don't try to remove myself in a way that like is going to be hurtful. I'm just like, this is not productive. We're both at a state where we're like probably double fighting. Like, let's disengage and re-engage.
Yeah.
And I think the working relationship also has developed more of a stronger like fawn response, where sometimes like it makes sense to acquiesce to like a partner because maybe their will is stronger, or they really feel strongly about something.
Yeah.
So trying to almost like withdraw and like allow that person.
Yeah.
Even though like my response would maybe be something else.
Right.
But I think it's like being able to create space and then respond.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an important note that you mentioned with like the fawn response. I think, especially within business partnership, two dudes, like both hard-headed, I would say, being able to compromise and concede, I think, are skills that have gotten us here. Like, if we didn't have that, this business would not be where it's at today. And it's difficult because the stakes get even higher and higher on what we're compromising for. But it's really important, and having the humility as well as just the ability to let go of your ego and not be so headstrong on certain things is really important.
Yeah.
you know, it's more of like a feminine trait, I would say. It's like not like submissive per se, but being able to compromise, you know, so
Yeah.
it's not always your way or the highway. Otherwise, nothing's going to get done. If
Yeah.
it does, it's not going to be holistically integrated, you know, from multiple different perspectives.
Yeah, and I think with any type of dynamic, you both people need to be heard, felt, seen, respected, and I also think on the other side of that, like, you're not always right. You know what I mean?
Right.
You need to like know that like someone else's thought process is not necessarily wrong, even though you think it's wrong.
Yeah.
Like, let someone else cook. Is
Yeah.
what I say.
Always.
You know.
I think I have a question for both of you. So at the age that you guys are both at now, right?
25 and 27.
Yeah, you've 25, 27. Frontal lobe is pretty much developed already at this point, unless you guys have stunted it in some way, which, okay, if you have, it's still in the process, right? If you were to have this company and this experience at, let's say, 20, 21, 22, do you think that you'd be successful in the experiences that you have, knowing all that you know about mental health and letting people have their space and allowing people cook and be able to cook and like react how they need to react and do emotional regulation? Do you think you guys would be successful?
No.
It's a good question.
I don't think I would be successful.
Yeah.
I developed a lot of these skills in the past like 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, I read a bunch of books about emotional regulation.
Right.
And like even I learned a lot about mental health
Of course.
in the past few years.
Of course.
I wouldn't have the knowledge. Me personally.
Yeah, I mean, Elijah and I both did a lot of like research and study on this industry prior to starting this business. Took a lot of classes, so obviously I wouldn't have that insight. But I do think that, I don't know.
It's a hard-hitting question.
Yeah, it's like difficult to look at yourself objectively and see, oh, am I like leaps and bounds more emotionally developed than I was a few years ago? I think intellectually, definitely, but emotionally, yeah, I don't know. Like what I'm getting at is like I wouldn't want a 20 or 21-year-old listening to this to feel discouraged. Like you need to be 25 or 27 to do something great.
Of course.
Like you have the ability to do it. Like as long as you believe in it and you envision it, you know.
I would just say with that, if there are people that are 20, 21 watching and they're like, oh, you know what? I think it comes when it's supposed to come. That's
Yeah.
like
Totally.
always the whole, with anything, any of these experiences, trauma
Yeah.
comes when it's supposed to come.
And I was like, I feel like I was quite successful as a promoter when I was 21, you know, and that I just realized that wasn't my life path or calling.
Yeah.
And I know you were successful at the things that you did, like with cryptocurrency. So like there was definitely success, but I didn't
course.
feel like it was self-actualized success.
Yeah. I got what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine you now being a club promoter at like
No.
27 and be like,
No way in hell.
yeah.
I could snap back in, but no, I would
Yeah.
hate it.
Yeah.
At the end, I hated it.
God, could you imagine?
Yeah, a lot of T's came from that. I think
Yeah.
big and small T's.
Yeah.
You know,
Then what is a big T and what is a small T?
big T, small T. I consider big T, they say big trauma, and then a small little T, like a small trauma.
So some people's big trauma, though, could be someone's small trauma
Yes,
and vice
Yeah.
versa.
it can be. It's all relative at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I remember I was at school and someone was telling me about like one of their hardships, and it was like my neighbor stole my hose and my mom like yelled at them, and it was hard to see my mom in that situation. And I was like,
This is like during your family class that you took.
no, this was like a different.
Yeah.
It was abroad. It was like we were all like sharing, and I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me, dude?"
Yeah.
And then I wanted to just like trauma, like
Dump.
be aggressive with my trauma.
Yeah.
Be like, that's your trauma? I'll show you trauma.
Right.
You know? And then like I hear your story, Kyla, and I'm like, oh, I got a little T. You know what I mean? I never fucking lived in a U-Haul.
Yeah.
Like,
but
It's difficult to be able
Relative.
to compare yourself. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, because it is relative. And at the end of the day, like, if you do, this is where selfishness can actually serve in your favor, where if you're not constantly compromising your trauma to others and like, oh, belittling it or increasing it, you know, then that's when you're actually able to work through it, you know,
of course.
and like just being more self-oriented in that capacity.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I had the same thing growing up. There's a lot of kids that are like really privileged, you know, but then I was really privileged relative to, you know, so it's all subjective.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because a big T is described as like major events normally seen as traumatic. emotions, beliefs, physical sensations that occur in your body. For example, serious accidents, natural disasters, robberies, chronic or repetitive instances, maybe sexual and non-sexual, war, combat, PTSD. That's
Yeah. But then someone's big T could also be like their parents got divorced.
For sure.
Correct.
That could be a huge.
Yeah, but it's like to what capacity? How did that affect you?
Right.
Like, was there were they fighting each other? Did it affect you? Was there verbal, physical?
Of course.
Did you have to move? Like, there's so many facets to it.
Small T trauma, overwhelming, but not as traumatic. Emotions, beliefs, and physical sensations that occur both in your mind and body. Unprocessed traumas have a long-lasting negative effect and can cause like low self-esteem and be hard to regulate your emotions with. So I think that it's interesting because like right now, I feel like the older generation is like, you don't even know what trauma is, you know? They like don't maybe recognize how small T traumas could add up and affect. And like even a big trauma like a divorce, you know? Well, it's like, well, at least no one hit you. You know, like I remember talking to my family member and I was like trying to explain my situation with my father and they were like, well, I had it way worse, you know?
Yeah.
They were like minimizing my experience compared to their experience.
That's interesting that you bring that up because I was talking to my mom and my little sister who's 18 now. She's turned 19. She was going through it, kind of the same experiences that I was around that age, you know, struggling with substance abuse, and she's pregnant now. So this has been a big shock to me. I'm going to be an aunt. So she got pregnant, but
Auntie K.
Congrats. That's huge. Have you been an aunt before?
I've not, but it's just a shock, right? Because like I am like 10 years older, expected to have the kids first. It's just like a big shock for me. It's like overwhelming. And she like, and all the experiences that I had, my mom was talking, she was like, Kyla, I don't understand it. She did not have a hard life. Like, yes, her dad died suddenly. Yes. But like you had it so much harder and like you were still able to go to college, graduate high school. My sister couldn't even get her like general education diploma because she had anxiety. And like I remember telling her, I'm like, why don't you just go sit down in class? She's like, I just can't. And then my grandma and I were talking. She's like, Kyla, if we left her, dropped her off somewhere in the middle of Indianapolis, she wouldn't know how to get home. You had at least the skills to build and figure out how to get home. You rode your bike from our house to high school at like 12 miles away, your bike at like 15 years old. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like totally different worlds. And we're really not that far apart, only 10 years apart. And so I just remember thinking like, what and how, you know what I mean? We're not that far apart to where I was more successful, even though I experienced way worse experiences and became more successful. And someone who had what I would consider to be a better situation totally went the wrong way. Yeah. It's just very shocking to me.
Like, I think one of two things. One, is it resilience? Like your ability to kind of just get back up. I mean, you're more of a resilient person. Or B, do you feel like this generation is more of a they call it like a coddled generation? What do you think, Danny? Do you think that this is...
Yeah, there's a quote. It's like, hard times create strong men create good times, and then good times create weak men create hard times. So it's like just this perpetual cycle of like The Coddling of the American Mind is another book that dives into this.
It's a good book.
Yeah. Where
controversial.
By Jonathan Haidt. And he essentially says that because of the entitlement of our generation and how convenient everything is and how instantly accessible information is, etc., there's this subtle complacency that riddles our generation, Gen Z. You know, I guess you were obviously a decade older, so you kind of were in the next generation where you maybe had some ethic and some work ethic, some perseverance, etc., a callous, if you will, right? But yeah, having a buffer against the external world is really important. And I think it's something that unfortunately is getting thinner and thinner as time progresses.
Yeah. So maybe those categories of like big T's or little T's are maybe getting confused. Because even like a little T could be changing jobs, divorce, like death in a family, frequent yelling, family secrets.
Yeah.
And those could be big T's to a lot of people versus big T's actually being like war, physical assault, sexual assault, natural disaster, child abuse. And it's like, how do you measure a big T versus a little t?
Right.
But they're little T's for like the older generation could be big T's for this generation.
Right.
I think I'm even guilty of that. I would say some of the things that you listed off as little T's have been big T's in my life, in my adult life, you know, breakups and whatnot. I think that, yeah, any absence of human connection oftentimes is a big T for some people. But then, you know, then again, 50, 100 years ago, that was just like, you're just kissing your husband off to war and you never see your wife until you die or something. And it's like, shit just is way different. You know
trauma.
what I mean? That's trauma. It's not like, oh, I broke up with this girl over Instagram and now I have to, you know.
She ghosted me.
She slid into someone else's DMs.
I have to download Tinder again. It's like, yeah, it's totally different. But again, subjective, right? And this is just like the cycle of trauma in some ways. Maybe these good times will create, you know, weak men per se, weak people, but then it's just a matter of time before it circles back around and we have some hard times and some good men.
And I think a lot of that kind of funnels into the how do we treat these big T's or little T's, right? Like, do we do like ketamine therapy? Like we often talk about like treatment resistant depression. Like anyone that kind of needs to go through some of these interventional treatments that we're working with, they need to be treatment resistant, which means that they have failed 2 antidepressants. So like for a majority of people, you would think that they would be going through some type of like really deep hardship.
Right.
But it's like, what does it really mean to be like treatment resistant? Treatment resistant depression.
Yeah. It's interesting. Again, I never can sit in a place and be like, judge somebody else's trauma because again, it's all in perspective. But I'll talk to some people and like your experience of being like the hose and the mom and you're like, she yelled and I'm like, I've tried every single damn antipsychotic in this damn world. You know what I mean? Like I just to fix my problem. And I don't know if it is perseverance or anything like that, but I'm glad. I just want to say that I'm glad we have like solution today versus when I was a child and like people don't talk about mental health. Either you go into the psych unit or you're medicated and no one talks about it.
Yeah.
No, there's no therapy, there's no counseling, there's no help. And even when I was presented help, I was like, there's help available?
Yeah.
Like, I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I was always told you just sweep it under the rug.
Right.
So I think now that we have all these resources that people are maybe getting the help that they need and the conversation is coming out.
Changing a bit.
It's changing a little bit.
Because I think whenever you need to find a balance, you need to overextend one way and then correct. And this may be that quote unquote overextension of just like the conversation because previous generations never had that conversation.
Right.
Now that we're having this conversation, maybe there does need to be a little bit of an overcorrection.
Yeah.
But I think that we're still in the thick of it to really understand.
Into the thick of it. Into the thick of it. The backyard again.
I thought you were singing Frozen.
No.
Into the Unknown.
Into the Unknown. That's an interesting concept, though. Yeah, maybe like we've gotten too into the mental health chat, and like it's been so.
You're so in your feels.
Yeah, so in the feels because it's constantly being shoved in your face.
Everybody was borderline in like 2021. Like everywhere I scroll, I'd be like, I've got borderline personality disorder. I'm like.
And everyone has ADHD, but it's because there's just like a dopamine secretion mechanism at your fingertips.
We started that with
like,
TV and the internet.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's not like on steroids, you know? Yeah. The algorithm knows more about you than your best friend. Is it actually
like a mental health diagnosis?
Or is it
just
conditioned?
You're a factor of your environment.
I honestly think a lot of this, I think obviously mental health is not only genetics, which we will get into here in a second, but it's also conditioned and your environment, so that the both environments like it's a double
nurture versus nature.
Even if you look at like depression, I don't know, at least for me, when I've been really depressed, I feel like a lot of it is also like boredom, you know, like I'm so comfortable that there's nothing causing me like enough pressure to really just go out there and like get after it until it gets to that point, and then I have to go out and get after it, and then my life starts circling and picking up momentum, and then I disseminate the depression.
I love being bored now because I know that there's not chaos going on in my life. Like I love just being able to roll into my bed and my Egyptian cotton sheets and be completely bored because I know I'm not going to have to like the next survival, right? Like my survival instincts are not out all the time, or I'm not like, where am I going to sleep? You know, where am I going to shower? Where is my next fix going to come from? So the boredom that comes, I'm like, you know what I mean?
There's
like
comfort in boredom.
It's a comfort. Yes, it is peace. It's truly peace.
Mind
and it's, people are like, you're not doing anything? I'm like, no, I'm not. And I'm happy that I'm not doing anything. I really am not.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's so many different ways of looking at the same thing.
I think I lean more towards you, Danny, where it's like, I'm constantly doing something.
I know.
And if I feel like I'm not doing something, then it's like, well, what the fuck am I doing?
Literally, sometimes I'm like, I wonder what those two are doing on the weekends. And then I see like, we're at the beach. I'm pickleball. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I've definitely experienced that and went through that. But like, I guess because I had to get my experiences of going through so much chaos and like survival, that is like, I feel like a granny now, you know? That I like really went too hard. Yeah. And now I'm in my 70s.
You're overcorrecting.
Just chilling.
Overcorrecting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Elijah, you read that book, didn't you? About it didn't start with you? Mm-hmm. About the generational trauma?
I did.
What did you think? Was it a crock of shit or real?
No, I think that your environment definitely could affect. Like, I was shooting at a clinic yesterday, and we were talking about depression, and I was like, "Has anyone gone through depression here?" And it was like me and 2 other people, and they were like, "Never got depressed."
What?
And they were like, "I just lean on like severely anxious."
Okay, I understand. I thought they were going to be like, no, my life is fine.
No, like, they were just like, I don't really... And I could kind of relate to that. Like, with the China thing, that was just like a whole lot of uncertainty, but I wasn't like, I'm going to throw myself off the Golden Gate Bridge. Like, I've never had those thoughts before, which I'm so blessed to be able to have, to say that. But I feel like it didn't start with you talks about, like, how your experiences will affect the way you respond. And I think nurture versus nature, if we're having that conversation, I think that from a nurture's perspective, I just leaned more towards, like, anxious / thinking / planning. That's kind of where my head goes.
But they're still on the same spectrum. They're on a scale.
Of
like anxious, anxiety, and depression. Like anxiety's on one and depression's on the other.
Yeah, I guess it's like anxiety is like, for me, it's like functional and it's energy, and then it needs to be like used. Yeah. Versus like a lack of energy, and I feel like cathartic that I can't do anything.
Interesting. That is my experience. It's just so interesting to hear other people's experience, because when I think of anxiety, I think of total panic. Like cannot breathe, gonna throw up, like it's impending doom. Like that's the anxiety I experience.
Yeah, I think that's like high form of anxiety.
Yeah,
like when I'm high, it's similar to like I'm so depressed and I want to end this experience.
Where you can be like a functional
you can have functional depression, where I feel like I operate more towards functional anxiety, and I feel like you, Danny, sometimes will feel it for sure. It's like I'm
more on like the functional depression, I would say.
For sure.
Yin and yang over here.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Absolutely.
Yin and yang.
Where I think I was just taught as a young kid, and this is behavioral, is like do something about it, like make a change. If something's wrong, like you're in control, like do something about it. Yeah. Like make some type of effort and something will change.
But it's hard to do that sometimes.
Totally. But that's just the way that I'm programmed.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like that's my thought like I can't be like, oh, I'm sitting in bed and I'm just going to wither away. Like I'd be like, get your ass up and do something.
I think that's the internal dialogue. Most difficult thing is when you do something consistently for months, years on end, hoping something will change, and it doesn't. And you try something else and you do the same thing and nothing's changing. That's I think where people get,
get into a loop.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like when nothing changes, you feel like you have no control over your external environment. And I've been there before, for sure. And then on the other end, when you feel like the most actualized and the most authentic, it's when you feel like you can literally bring your thoughts into reality. Like there's no friction between what you want and what's actualized.
It's interesting you say that, because I've always thought that too. But every time I'm like the whole manifestation and all of that, I've always felt there was a barrier because I was so paralyzed in fear, anxiety, depression, literally paralyzed. And like, what are people going to think about me? What if I fail? Like all these different like fears and what ifs and whatnot. I don't know. I
think fear is probably the thing that impairs you the most from actualizing what you want in life. And also not knowing what you want. And that's where we get to like the depression as well. It's like a lot of times you just don't know what you want.
Yeah.
And I feel like you've really actualized in these past few months. I mean, you talked about like figuring out a call center. We're like figuring it out. You talked about like posting content. We're posting content and the comments are like out there, you know?
Right.
Like a lot of the stuff may not be conscious, but I think that you're vibrating at a certain frequency,
of course,
and you're operating out of like gratitude and love and appreciation, and you're doing things that you are like helping other people, and then without you realizing that you've put these things out there, they're coming to you, Kyla.
Right.
You know,
that's always been that thing. Like you could want something so bad, but it's not going to come until like you really are at a level. I think anybody who's experienced like any type of fortune or like success will always talk about like it will come, but you're not like love. You're not going to know when it hits you.
You have to like surrender.
You have to give up to it and be like, fuck it, I don't want it anymore. That's where I got to the point because I really seriously, anybody that knows and loves me knew that I wanted to be an actress. Like that was like my life calling, and I wanted to act and have a career, a successful career acting. And as badly as I wanted it, I chose, it gets me emotional, I chose drugs. You know, like didn't care. I gave up. I was like, I'm not good enough. Like I'll never be good enough. Like I'm fat. You know, like all these different things that played into the play. But I had to really go through those experiences to even get to this point now where I'm sitting on a couch with you guys to just be, you know, at a level of like gratitude and helping people to get to where I want to be. It may not be like I'm not on SNL, but like we get to laugh at our own jokes, you know, with somebody filming us. Like that to me is success. And like coming from the Midwest and like Indianapolis, like
living in LA,
never like I knew I was going to be there, but I didn't know how I was going to get there. You know, like I remember watching like MTV shows and being like, I want to be in Los Angeles or New York City. That's where I want to be.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
And never thought, I didn't know how I was going to get there. No idea what was going to happen. But
who would have thought it would have been a ticket to rehab?
Exactly. When I was like, oh, this is it. You know, like when I got the ticket to rehab, I was like, this is it, motherfucker. You know what I mean? So it's interesting how it happens. Yeah. For sure.
I feel like, Danny, you're the same way. With,
exactly
like,
the same way.
You were like, I've always wanted to do a podcast.
Yeah. I love podcasts.
Since we met.
I love podcasts.
No, I do. I think it's the easiest way to learn in the modern day, in my opinion.
Of course.
Because like, it's just organic conversation, and especially when you're listening to experts, I think we all have a good vibe here. I'm excited to get more guests on as well. I really enjoyed the Dr. How podcast too, but. Yeah, I'm really grateful for how far we've come. And I think the more intention we can put into what we're trying to cultivate, I think we have all the building blocks now. It's just a matter of like really sitting with what we're looking to bring into fruition, you know, like what do we actually want this to grow into? And it's coming together day by day.
Trauma aside and all the experiences, trauma aside, I feel like I can like take my trauma backpack off here with you guys. We can like put it in the corner and just kind of debrief and talk about these serious topics. And it's okay to like not be okay sometimes, or cry or be okay. And you've always I feel like we should be sitting like Joe Rogan at desk sometimes. Don't you?
Like a table?
Yeah, like at a table.
I don't know. I like the setup too.
I love the setup, but I just sometimes I feel like I need to be at a table, like sitting in front of Danny
like a notepad.
and Elijah.
Yeah, I think it's important to surround yourself with people that you could take the trauma backpack off, or at least you could like giggle about it, you know, and just be like, "Yeah, I relate." You know,
we should do the trauma dump candy salad.
Yeah, we should dump it. What would be your candy, and what would you dump in there?
Ooh, my candy would probably be, sweet tarts.
Like the ones that are shaped like hearts?
No, like the little round sweet tarts.
that are like really like kind of sour but sweet at the same time.
The powdery ones?
Yeah.
Ew. Okay.
Or the big chewy ones.
Okay.
The big chewy sweet tarts.
Okay, and then what are you saying as you pour the sweet tarts in there?
What do they say when they usually pour it in
They
there?
talk about like a trauma that you would dump in there.
My name is Kyla, and I brought the big chewy sweet tarts, and this is for my great grandfather molesting me for 8 years, and my mom.
I love powder.
I love yummy.
What about you, Danny? What type of
I
game?
got so serious, and we're laughing.
See, you have to giggle about it because it's just like the human experience, you know?
Yeah, of course.
I've never seen this like activity. So what they do is they put candy into a salad bowl.
Yeah, and they trauma dump as they put the candy in the bowl.
Okay. I would say my candy of choice.
You're like, hi, my name is
Danny. I am gonna bring. What's the best candy? I like the Nerds clusters. I'm gonna bring the Nerds clusters, okay? And I'm gonna get a nice Greek salad. I'm gonna put these Nerds clusters in this Greek salad, and I am going to say that I am going to dump these Nerds clusters as a symbolic movement of letting go of the relationship that I had with my mother and how it's embedded its way into every feminine relationship that I've had, and just transcending abandonment and the longing for intimacy that was not always there.
Chef's kiss. That was beautifully written.
I'm eating a cluster.
Yeah.
The Nerds cluster on top.
Beautifully.
I love that.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. You took it in a little different direction than TikTok usually doesn't. But I like it.
Yeah.
It's a new spice.
I've never seen this before. I don't even know what I was trying to do.
I feel like you just put like a lot of relief into the air.
Yeah.
That was like heavy.
Something else came out, not just the clusters.
I felt like I had to like, really like be a part of like an acting movement. I had to like paint the vision of the clusters and the Greek salad.
It. Yeah.
Maybe some olives.
You kind of lost me with the Greek salad. I'm gonna be honest with you, because it's not an actual salad. They just like pour candy into a bowl,
and they call it a candy salad.
Okay.
It's not like a.
I thought that we were making salad with candy.
No. Same but different.
Okay. Well, that's mine. What about yours, Elijah?
I feel like I have to go sweet. Now you guys did I can't like bring chocolate in here because it would go mess.
You can.
Oh, okay. So we're gonna mix it all together.
Yeah.
This is good. Sweet tarts and Nerds clusters.
That's what I'm saying. So now I need to like bring in. Okay. So hi, my name is Elijah. I am bringing in watermelon Sour Patch Kids.
Ooh.
Nice.
Pour in. My trauma is when I was 10 years old. The worst drives of my life were back from hockey tournaments with my father, who would get belligerent drunk, embarrass me, and then beat the shit out of me when I came home.
Yay, Elijah.
Seriously, if those people who know athletes like are like growing up with a parent who's really tough,
yes,
you know those drives.
Dude, I can only imagine how many professional athletes had the most fucked up parents.
Oh, that's
ever.
such a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like I wonder,
because I remember the kids that were really fucking good when I was playing high school soccer. Their parents were the ones that were up their ass and around the corner, making sure that they were 15 minutes early for every practice and stayed 15 minutes late taking shots and were kissing the coach's ass and
totally.
I can only imagine. But then again, like, in order to be great, you have to do things that others wouldn't, I think that goes for, it's interesting. I think if it's self-derived passion, that's okay.
Yeah, that's
right?
what was
if
tough.
It's imposed, then it's kind of
My dad always
up.
put me on the team with like the best players.
Yeah.
And they were like always way bigger than me. And he was like, this is the only way you're going to get better. And I was like, absolutely miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated it. And then he'd be like, why are you the worst one? And I'm like, you're putting me on a league with people that are literally twice
the
my
best.
size.
Literally the best. Yeah.
Doesn't check out.
And if you were like, if you felt that inclination, like dad put me on the league, I want to do, and then it's like, okay. But if it's like he's imposing you into that level of uncomfortability where like you're almost like at risk for playing with kids that are so much bigger than you, like, like you can get fucked up, especially if you're playing hockey with a kid who's like way bigger than you.
6'2" and Elijah's 4'11".
Yeah. And
he's like
a little
he's
He's like, Elijah, why aren't you getting better, bro?
Yeah.
And he just fucking gets
and
smashed into the boards.
Yeah, look over and he'd be like aggressive, like,
better get too aggressive. It's funny you say that. So I grew up in a very similar household.
Yeah.
So this is why I think I struggle with body image and food.
Tell me.
Because when I get in trouble, my mom used to make me run.
No way.
She'd be like, we had this, oh God, I can still remember it. We had this huge yard, I mean, talking like a plot of land in the city. And so like, it was like all these crack houses around, whatever. And it was just our big land.
Yeah.
And she'd be like, run, like, just run. God, I swear it sounded like geese. Like I can still hear her screaming, run, Kyla. And I would be like, and if I'd stop, I swear to God, I could hear, run.
Oh my god!
And she would just wind up and like, or if I'd get in trouble, she'd make me do burpees because I was a heavyset kid. Like I've always struggled with weight, and that comes from like.
Did that like make you want to eat more? Were you like, "Fuck you, mom"?
Yeah, it made me like want to like not do anything because like the punishment is now equals exercise. So that's why I don't go to the gym now.
That's
because I
crazy.
associate.
What a negative connotation.
I hate it. Like if I start sweating or like if I feel that like tense, like the adrenaline, like it reminds you of like getting punished. And it's so fucked up because I would love to be able to go to the gym and like power lift and like do all these different things, but I have such a negative
connotation
attachment to it.
Where you feel like you're being punished on a subconscious level.
Yes,
Every
like
time you lift weights.
every time like I'm running or
It's
like
someone's
I'm
lashing
physically,
you,
like
and
it's
not in a good way.
like my brain is like, you're in trouble, you're bad, you're fat, you're in trouble, you're bad, you're fat, like
Damn.
overly playing. And so when people like, they're like, oh, I love going to the gym, I'm like, fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, fuck you. Because I've really made that attachment to it. And then my mom still was she was really athletic. And so she wanted me to be athletic, which I was very good. I played all different sports, volleyball, softball. I played soccer. I mean, I was all over the place, right? I was a competitive cheerleader. Like I did all kinds of different stuff. And my mom, kickball, she coached kickball, our kickball team, Catholic school kickball team. And their saying was, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. So we had to be expected to be perfect. I mean, if anything we did wrong, run a lap. Like if we missed a ball, run a lap. Like it was intense.
When perfection is driving, who's riding shotgun?
Shame, guilt. I mean, all different kinds of things. And then my
That's
stepdad.
on kickball at Catholic school.
Yeah, no, it was. And my stepdad was like he was a wrestler. And so he did like competitive wrestling and was like state champ in his high school and then went on to like the sectionals and finals and all of this. So then my little brother was expected, and now he has suffered from like an eating disorder, is to make weight and like to go through all these different things. Like
isn't it crazy
passed
how
down.
like those generational traumas, like how they reflect? Because I think my father wanted me to be such a good athlete because like he took it so far.
Yeah.
And he's like, my son's gonna take it this far,
right.
And it's almost like they have these preconceived notions of themselves. They didn't live up to them. They're like, my offspring's gonna live up to them. And like,
yeah, it's a very human trait for sure. But it is fascinating, like, because what we were talking about earlier, where like hard times create, strong men, and strong men create good times make weak men. It's like, to what point do you impose that pressure, right? Because you can't just give your child everything and show no friction towards them, right? Because then they become really entitled, and a small trauma, a little t trauma becomes a big trauma. But then on the inverse, you can't be just like, raining hell on them, trying to get them to be the perfect, pro Olympic athlete if they don't want to.
But then look at Russia.
Where's the line? How do you make that discernment? I don't know. Parenting
we're
must
not
be
parents.
really hard.
Yeah, it must be really difficult. I think just like allowing your kid to do what they want to do, and trying to support them.
To an extent, right? I mean,
like I'm grateful that I played, I guess, hockey and baseball, but it's like honestly a lot of those memories, like I have a really tough time making relationships with men because of like how humiliated I felt as a kid on that baseball field. So difficult. Like I just felt like anytime that I did something and acted like authentically, like there'd be repercussions.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, yeah, I think that makes sense because like on my end, I never had any pressure to play sports, but I see that my high school sports experience is like one of the biggest catalysts to any form of discipline that I've cultivated as an adult.
Yeah.
Like I see it only as positive.
Like your conditioning.
I never had that pressure though.
Yeah.
Your conditioning every summer.
Yeah, conditioning, all that.
Yeah.
And I felt like really sharp and like the acuity of
like
and I hated it.
Isn't it funny? Yeah, I'm the same way. It's like a negative connotation. I mean, I don't hate the gym because it's like I didn't have that connotation towards like working out.
Yeah.
It was more in like group sports with other guys.
I never heard of that punishment. Go run, like instead of getting grounded, like go run 2 miles.
Well, here's the thing: is I think it's not. And I love my mom. And I have a great
relationship.
relationship.
They try their best.
But she tried her best, and I think there was also a thing of like obviously, because grew up in poverty and like healthy foods are very expensive. So like buying bread and butter is much more cheaper than like fucking kale and
Eggs.
olive oil or eggs, you know? So when people are making comments about my weight, you know, like if I'm in trouble, go run, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like,
and do you think that she felt like part to blame for like feeding you these things and then your weight?
well, here's the other part is my mom and I talk about this all the time because I'm going through weight loss and all this stuff right now. And she's done a great job, I think, reflecting back on, I give props to my mom because she never used to be like this, but she's done therapy and she's gone back and been like,
great.
you know, like, let's take a look. And she's not like beating herself up. She's not beating me up. She's like, let's look at your genetics and like look at like your biological grandma on the paternal side had gastric sleeve when I was in high school. And your biological father was like a football player. Like your build and genetics are there, right? And that of itself. And then we've got on my maternal side like diabetes and like overweight and over big chest women and all different things. So like that plays into a role. And then also my mom was a single mom for the most part. My dad was in college and she wasn't working. She was on disability. So it was just me and her. It was just like cereal, milk, like basic things or whatever I could get at school. Processed foods.
Yeah.
And a lot of kids don't gain that weight in processed foods. A lot of kids nowadays, you know, they're on processed foods. They don't get, but I gain that weight because that's my genetics.
Different.
I'm genetically different, but I feel like my mom, like my mom beats herself up for all of that and like really trying like, whereas my little brother could have like chips and a soda, but I was only given like water and a granola bar, you know, like, and it's like unfair because then it plays a game in my head of like, there's something wrong with you. You can't eat this. We've gone through it before, but
so interesting how like intergenerational trauma, like we're talking about, like how much it has a rippling effect.
And then that's the other thing is like, that's how my grandparents showed love to me was like feeding me.
Yeah.
And they loved me so. I mean, I know that I love my grandma to death, but like my grandfather, rest in peace, he would be like chocolate milk time, you know, like when I was like 2, and that was my thing, chocolate milk. And so like I was just constantly drinking chocolate milk, and like that's so unhealthy, but that's how they showed love, is giving me, here's a cookie, you know what I mean? Like that's how they showed love. So I already had these poor eating habits at a very young age and addicted to sugar.
And it wasn't even your fault.
And it was out of love.
And that's,
you know?
where, exactly, but that's where, like, back to the point of, like, at what point should a parent be discerning, like, you shouldn't just do what you want, right, and support everything you want. It's like, that's almost, like, not even your fault at that point. It's like it was embedded in your coding as a child, like, you know what I mean, pre-adulthood. It's like...
And then my mom tries to fix it. Run! You know
yeah,
I mean?
And then she's like totally perpetuating the problem.
Totally extremes, and God forbid she didn't know what else to do. You know what I mean? She didn't have the money to even buy the proper foods or even know what nutrition was because we couldn't afford it. But here's the other really strong point with that is like people can look at me and think that I made
these decisions
myself. I've struggled with my entire life.
And they're like, you lazy bitch, why don't you just get to the gym?
Why don't you just get to the gym? And I'm like...
And you're like, that place is going to trigger the shit out of me.
Motherfucker, I've tried.
Right.
You know, like I have really, 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 really tried to like lose weight. And I've lost a significant amount of weight in a short period of time, gained it all back because, you know, experiences, trauma, whatever. And just like recently, like I had lost weight, like a significant amount of weight in the last year and a half. And before I went on this Zepbound and everything, I was like, I still thought I was at that weight, not realizing I had gained all this weight. So when I stepped on the scale, I was like, when that day that I told you.
That was one of the funniest days.
And I was like, I thought I was still at that weight. So
you're
see
like,
that I was
have
different.
Horrible news.
Yeah.
And I was like, what happened? And you're like, I weighed this amount. And I was like, okay, well, what did you weigh before? And
I have no idea.
Couldn't tell you.
Thought. Yeah, couldn't tell you because I thought I was still that weight because that's what my mind does to make it like cope. Like you're okay. But then I realized how fast time has went on with COVID and everything and all that trauma that's happened. But it's very interesting that again people talk about obesity as a disease. It is 100% a disease. I believe it is a disease because there are so many different issues going on, which we can get in that to a different day. Like thyroid issues. PCOS, I have PCOS, insulin resistance, hormonal imbalances. There are so many things that come into play with weight and how it's treated. Every time I go to the doctor and I have a complaint, they're like, you just need to lose weight. You don't think I know that?
Right.
Like there's other
Yeah.
different things going on, you know?
Yeah, and it's crazy how the emotional T's, or big, little, have an effect on your physical life
They
as
do.
well, you know,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and how it all trickles in.
Yeah.
Yeah. It affects everything. Spiritual, physical, emotional.
So work through those T's, whatever that
all
means.
interconnected.
If you're looking for treatment or you need support with your mental health, we connect to therapists, psychiatrists, interventional psych clinics that will look at your mental health hopefully a little bit differently than traditional medication/therapy will. If you're looking for therapy and psychiatry, we also could help you out. Hit the link in the bio if you are in a place where you are ready to work through some of your T's.
And let's chat.